meeting is not officially open. It will not open until we have one or two more members. I believe it's one more member attending, but we wanted to go ahead and get started so that we could get the good people from Upper Cape out of here. So we'll turn it over to you, and if you introduce yourself for the TV audience as well as the members that aren't familiar, and just go through the information.
Okay. I'm Bob Dutch. I'm the superintendent at Upper Cape Cod Regional. And I wanted to share with you this evening our budget so that you have some familiarity, some awareness, and hopefully some answers to questions. I'm going to go through the presentation that each of you have as a handout, and I'm going to start on the page that begins with FY15 major budget highlights. The foundation budget you'll see tonight is an increase of 3.16% from fiscal year 14. There is a Chapter 70 increase from the state of $25 per student. You'll notice when we get to revenue that there's a transportation reimbursement rate increase of almost $200,000. This budget represents no additional staffing. It is the same staff that we've had for the last 2 years. You'll see that there's a reduction in the capital budget as a result of the HVAC bond having been paid off.
If you want to hold that just for thought, and I'll open the meeting now.
Okay.
We got everybody, and then we can go forward. We have a quorum. We don't have everybody. We have 2 members out sick and one that's not quite there.
Sorry I'm late.
All right, well, welcome to the March 12th, 2014 meeting of the Wareham Finance Committee. I'll do the quick roll call. We have Mrs. Fonts, Mr. Worthen, Mr. Camerano, Mrs. Donahue, and myself are in attendance. So the meeting's open. We'll do the citizens participation later. So please continue, and I apologize.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the capital has been reduced by a little over 13% because the HVAC bond has been paid off. The resultant actual assessment collectively to the 5-member towns represents an increase of 1.6% because of the revenue that we are putting against the foundation budget. If you go to the next page, the guiding principles, these are the things that we consider in the process of building our budget, and for the most part they are similar to the considerations for virtually every town's school district. We're required to implement the Common Core state standards, the new state's educator evaluation system, the new state assessment, which is PARC, and that piece which is unique to Upper Cape Tech in comparison to the Wareham Public Schools is something called a competency tracking system. Our technical students are required to meet competencies in the standards related to their technical programs, and we have to track that for each student. Eventually, teachers will be evaluated on the progress that students make against those standards. So that's a unique piece of what we've got to do. Additionally, we're trying to sustain the district's existing curricular and extracurricular programs. Obviously, we must provide all the mandated services in both special education and general education. We are trying to maintain reasonable class size, but keeping staff consistent with the increasing enrollment makes that a little bit of a challenge. And then, as I've said in the past, we've got a 45-year-old building, and we try to maintain that both as a facility from an educational perspective, but as well as the infrastructure that's needed in the technological society that we have today. So if we go to the next page, I share with you the comparison of per pupil costs between Upper Cape Tech and Wareham. So Wareham pays $10,071 per student as the component of the operating assessment. Okay, so that doesn't include capital, and that's minus any revenue that we put against the budget. The cost to educate a high school student in Wareham, according to the DESE, is $11,953. So you're certainly getting what I would consider a bargain comparatively looking at those per pupil costs. The next few slides or pages represent the line items. I just want to explain a little bit how this is structured so that as you're looking at it a little bit later and discussing it, you have some understanding. In the past, we've done the line items by school committee, superintendent's office, and not provided you any detail as to what goes into those. And we wanted to try and be a little more transparent with providing you an understanding of what goes into each of those line items. So that's what you're seeing there, and a subtotal for that line item. To the far right, we've also included the percent increase that represents in FY15 when compared to FY14, or in some cases a decrease. As I go through this, I won't take time for each of the line items other than to explain those that are significantly different, either as an increase or a decrease. So on that first page, I don't think there's anything that stands out as overly significant as an increase. If you go to the next page, again, you'll see that the increases are minimal. I do want to point out, and I think it's worth noting, if you look at the teaching line item, you'll see that there's an increase of 1.89%. When you consider that we had a 2% raise negotiated with all of our teaching staff, plus steps and lanes, yet we're under that 2%, I think that represents some significant attempts at making sure that we minimize the most significant cost associated with educating students, which is the teacher salaries. Moving on to the next slide, if you look at supplies, you'll see a 9% increase there. This is a 1% increase, one-time increase, excuse me, and it's a result of the need to add some equipment to our health careers program as part of their child care component within their curriculum. So that there's some equipment that we need to purchase for that. In instructional technology, you see almost a 24% increase. That increase is because we have included iPads in the budget this year. We have never included them, even though we've added them the last 2 years for our students. We've been able to pay for those out of the previous year's existing budget, and this time we've had to budget it. And again, you shouldn't see that increase again because it'll be in there on a regular basis from this point forward.
Wait, how many do you have? What percent of the students?
Hold on,
excuse me.
Then we got to go back and ask questions.
Okay.
Okay. If you go to the next slide, again, you see no significant increases there under student services and psychological services. Turning to the next page, still under the student services function, the increase that's worth noting is that the athletic program has gone up by 10.73%. That's a result of the negotiations that occurred last June. Our coaches were the lowest paid of the 5 towns, as well as in comparison to other vocational technical high schools. So we've placed them at the middle as far as salaries for coaches, and that's why you're seeing that increase. Again, that's a one-time increase. You won't see that on a regular basis. If you turn to the next page, again, heating and utilities is up 9%. It's a shot in the dark. We never know what's happening. We do have the additional building on campus, and that obviously uses some energy. But again, it's hard to predict the cost of both electricity and natural gas for heat. If you turn to the next page, operation and maintenance, nothing significant there. Go to the fixed charges page, which is next. And you see under employee benefits, I do think that it's significant that we were able to keep the percent increase at 3.4% when you consider health insurance traditionally is increasing at about a 10% rate. So our ability to minimize that with the program that we're utilizing with Cape Cod Municipal Health Group has been significant. So you see the total foundation budget is an increase of 3.16 to $12,387,906. So that's our budget. If you then turn to the next page, you'll see revenue. You see a slight increase in Chapter 70 revenue, 2.9 million approximately. That's the additional $25 per student. Anticipated interest revenue continues to go down. Deferred tuition is tuition for one student out of district, and municipal Medicaid reimbursements for students who are receiving speech therapy or psychological services, and that also, as you've experienced with your own school district, continues to decline. Against the budget, we have an excess and deficiency account, and we are putting $92,000 against the budget. If you look at the last 5 years, we are now over $1 million of excess and deficiency that we've put against the budget. So you see the net foundation is 9.3 million, which represents a 3.92% increase. Next is the budgeted transportation. And here's where you see some significant differences. The amount provided by district is up somewhat. Contracted transportation has gone down. The reason for that, we were bidding 4 of our routes last year. We anticipated a certain rate. There was some competition, and fortunately those bids came in lower than anticipated, so you're seeing that as we move forward for the next 3 years that remain on that on those contracts. So the total transportation has gone up only $2,000. If you look at the aid from the state, it's going from $406,000 to $618,000. That's a $212,000 increase. So the net transportation budget to the towns is $313,000 as opposed to the $522,000 from last year. I think it's worth noting that while it's within our purview to utilize those funds to buy buses, buy vehicles, whatever we see fit to do, we thought, given the fiscal situations in the 5-member towns, it'd be more reasonable to put that against the budget and try to minimize or offset some of the other costs that you're experiencing. If we then look at the LPN program, you'll see that the cost for that program is $565,000. The tuition that the students pay is $578,000, so the net is a profit of $13,240, which also goes against the budget, the foundation budget. So combined net transportation and the LPN program, you're seeing over a 62% decrease in that budget. If we then go to capital, you can see that our capital budget for equipment has remained consistent. The bond principal, we're now only paying for the window project at $100,000 of principal per year. We have the stabilization account, which is for the wastewater treatment plant that has to be completed within 2 years. And we're putting $100,000 into that. And then bond interest on the window project is down to $15,000. So you can see the total capital budget has decreased by $39,000 to $335,700. As you look at the next page with enrollment percentages of the budget. So Wareham's assessment is partially based on the number of students at Upper Cape Tech as a percentage of the total number of students in Wareham and as a total percentage of the student population at Upper Cape Tech. And as you know, your assessment has gone down this year compared to last year, and the reason is that there are 12 fewer students from Wareham at Upper Cape Tech, while the enrollment has gone up by 17 students. So that has that inverse relationship for your assessment. While that's important to note, I think if you look at FY13 in comparison to FY15, you can see there's still an increase, which explains why last year was such a difficult year financially, because you had such a large increase from FY13 to FY14. And it's hard to predict what's going to happen year to year. That's a moving target as students apply. I can tell you that the number of students who have applied for next school year is about the same as it was last year. And I can actually give you exact numbers. Last year, there were 96 students out of 197 who applied, 49% of your 8th grade class. This year, there are 92 out of 184, 50% of your 8th grade class. So it's pretty close to the same representation who's applied. We're still in process, so we don't know how many will get in. If you look at the following page, this is how your capital budget is determined. We take the total enrollment in the 5 towns, and you can see it's 10,902. And we compare that to Wareham's enrollment in grades 1 through 12. So we divide the 2,446 by the 10,902, and therefore Wareham students collectively in the 5-member towns represent 22.4% of the population. So therefore, you're responsible for 22.4% of the capital expenses. The next 2 slides are, again, informational to help you understand the effect that enrollment has. And again, I'm trying to give you a 5-year snapshot. You can see what's happened to the enrollment in Wareham. There are approximately 300 fewer students over the last 5 years compared to 2010. And there are 10 more students at Upper Cape Tech. So that's a reduction of 10.47% in Wareham, but an increase of 4.4% at Upper Cape Tech. So again, they're inverse, and therefore the dollars are also inverse. And that's what's represented on the next page. You had $18 million of Chapter 7 of required net school spending, of which 92.8% was going to Wareham. And that's based on the enrollment in Wareham. And 1.2 million was coming to Upper Cape Tech, or 7%. Because the enrollment changed, we now get 10.4% of the required contribution that the state determines, and you're only getting 89.59%. So that's why you're seeing those dollar differences. And again, that's purely determined by enrollment figures at Upper Cape and in the town of Wareham. The next slide represents where our budget goes, and it's self-explanatory, I think. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I just, again, would like to point out, as I do each year, you've got operations and maintenance and fixed charges at 16.93%, so almost 29% of our budget has nothing to do with a student. It's all around insurance, building insurance, those fixed costs that we have little to no control over. That's not necessarily true for all towns. As you consider minimum required net school spending, our minimum required net school spending includes those 2 components. For other towns, it does not. So the dollars that are earmarked for a town school like Wareham are going all to educate the students. Not true with a regional technical school, or any regional school for that point. If you look at the next slide, you'll see the increase and what percentage of the increase is going to each of those 5 categories. And you can see that now 31% of the increase is going to those 2 components that have nothing to do with educating students. The next page provides you with a snapshot of our foundation budget percent increases over the last 5 years. I think we've been pretty consistent with the increases for the 5-member towns. Looking at the next 3 slides, it's a little information about what you get for your dollar. And I made this point last year, and I'll continue to make the point. Upper Cape Tech is your school. It's one of your schools. And you should be proud of the performance of all of the students at Upper Cape Tech, including those from Wareham. When you look at the percentage of students scoring advanced or proficient in English language arts, math, and science, you can see that we are far above the state average. If you look at the next indicator, you look at graduation rates, and again, you can see that Upper Cape Tech far outpaces the state. And I would point out that our special ed students, 100% of our special ed students graduated in 2013 compared to the state average of 68%. I think that's pretty significant, given that we have a larger special ed population than most school districts at about 22%. And then finally, high school dropout rates, and you may have seen this article in Cape Cod Today. There was data on that as well. Our high school dropout rate is 0.3%, and you can see how it's declined over the last 4 years, as has the states. That represents 1 to 2 students dropping out from that cohort. Co-op placements, I put that information there for your benefit. And then finally, the next page is the Wareham apportionment of the local contribution. And this is what I was summarizing in that other page that I provided for you. You can see the 89% to the 10.9. But if you look at FY15 compared to FY14, you can see that you've gone to 89.59% of the contribution, and Upper Cape Tech is down to 10.4%. So there's a slight decrease in what percentage of the minimum contribution, the required contribution, is coming to you. Upper Cape Tech, you're seeing, is $117,000, almost $118,000 less, with an increase of $39,000 to the town of Wareham. So if you turn to the next page, this is a summary of the assessment for Wareham. The minimum contribution as calculated by the state, the remainder of the net foundation, which is your responsibility, your percentage of the net LPN and transportation, for a total operating expense assessment of $2.6 million. Your percentage of the capital is $75,318 for a total FY15 assessment of $2.7 million compared to the FY14 assessment of $2.996 million, which is a decrease of almost $250,000 less than last year. And then finally, the last page, which we have included, we have a theme each year at the school, and I thought this theme was worthwhile to incorporate in this presentation because we truly believe that Wareham, whether we're talking about the Finance Committee, the Selectmen, town meeting members, or the population in general, is part of the team that we are working with to try and establish a strong foundation for our communities. And we appreciate all that you do in support of the school, and hopefully we're able to return your investment, provide a return on your investment. So with that, I would entertain any questions that you may have.
Let's do this. You guys want to start over there and come around? Okay,
I'm okay for now.
all right. Well, there goes Tom, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, I'm curious to your use of the iPad. I mean, last year you had one class or one grade, I'm not sure, that was using, where they were taking the course at home and doing their homework in class. Is that the same as it was?
No, we piloted it 2 years ago, looked at the data, felt that the data represented what we considered success, and thought it worthwhile to incorporate that into 2 additional grades. So there are now 3 grades this year at the high school that are using iPads, and next year we would purchase them for the incoming freshmen, so that every student in the high school would have an iPad.
And what is there an efficiency to be gained in the teacher per student ratio?
I wouldn't say there's an efficiency from that perspective. I think the metric that I would look at in determining the success of utilizing this is the outcomes and the performance of students. And I'll use one that we've looked at that I think is most significant, and that's failure rates. We had students failing classes at a rate of about 8%. And most of that was a result of a lack of engagement. Students not doing homework, not paying attention in class, just not interested. I'm finding now that the failure rate is down to 2%. And I attribute that to student engagement because they're doing their homework. So they're much more successful. They also are taking more responsibility for their education than they did in the past. So I think that's probably the biggest outcome that I think makes it worthwhile.
Are there other technical schools that are doing the same thing? Are you?
Yes. Yeah, there are. I will say that we were at the forefront, particularly in our technical programs. It's not unique in academic classrooms, but I think that we're one of the few that use it in the technical programs. And what I'm finding is, and I'll use automotive as the example, a teacher can produce a video on how to do a brake job, and the student can have that iPad next to the brake job they're doing and watch the steps over and over and over again as much as they need to, and not have to wait for that teacher to come back. Additionally, in the past, if they were doing a brake job, before they could go to step 3, they had to have step 2 checked by the teacher. Now they can go through the steps with someone videotaping what they're doing, and the teacher can review that and say, nope, you did this wrong, you need to go back and fix this, or it's all set. So it's providing some checks and balances for us with some scale of efficiency in the instructional model. So in the technical programs, I think it does provide some efficiencies. It also cuts down on discipline issues because students aren't standing around waiting for someone to check their work.
One final one. Who's producing the content?
In most cases, it's the teacher, but there are some pre-developed content that's available in the technical programs, usually through the organizations like NATEF in collision repair. ICAR has pre-done curricula that is part of what we already own as a participant.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Dutch, I want to thank you on your presentation here. Very well job done.
Thank you.
2 questions. Do you feel that the increase in the money spent on the athletic program is, where most of the schools now and everything are actually cutting back on, athletic programs? You feel that it's beneficial to the students?
Well, the increase in this particular instance is more a result of trying to create equitable salaries for the coaches so that we would be able to retain those coaches. As far as the value of athletic programs, I think they speak for themselves. Students who participate in athletics are generally better students because they're more disciplined, because they know they don't have a lot of free time on their hands, and they've got to be very, very disciplined in how they approach their studies. Additionally, as you look at our enrollment over time, you can see that the number of students coming to Upper Cape Tech has increased, and as a result, interest in athletic programs has increased as well. And then finally, the last piece of all of this is, if we look back 10 years ago, our technical students as juniors and seniors would come in to school, they'd leave at 2:10 and they'd go to a job. And now they're wanting to continue to participate in sports. So we've got larger participation as a result, and feel as though there's an obligation on our part to provide for those students who have that interest.
Very good. Just one other quick question. On the maintenance page there, you had only a 2.5 increase in the snow. Is that, you guys do, the snow removal this year must have been, did you guys over budget, go over budget in the snow this year?
We're over budget on material as it relates to snow removal, sand and salt. Fortunately, our snow removal the snowstorms have happened at such time that we could utilize our staff who were there during the day already. I have 3 salaried people who, when it snows, come in, and they don't get overtime because they're salaried. So we've had some efficiencies from that perspective as well. We'll wait and see if we need to do something as far as being over budgeted in that particular line item. But it's not one that I would recommend increasing, because it is so unpredictable that it's generally not something I'd recommend.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Donahue?
Thank you. I don't have a question, just a comment, and I do want to compliment you on the presentation and on the work that you do. I'm just frustrated, and I need to know that you appreciate the frustration for those of us that sit here. You have a modest 3.16%. We've level funded our schools, and we're asking them to do further cuts. You've had no decreases to your staff. We're taking cuts there. You have a budget that has capital. We have a town budget that has none. You add to your stabilization. We're not able to do that. So we're fortunate this year because less kids are going to Upper Cape. So we're okay because we can afford it, because actually there's less kids going. And it's a great opportunity for them, and I'm glad they can go. But you just need to be aware that this is a really tough time for us. We understand how this works with the other towns that participate in the program, and that we really don't have a whole lot of choice for that. But we're going to be revisiting the way that we do business in the next year, and we're going to have to ask for your cooperation in every kind of savings that you can come up with too, because it's really tough to go back to the town and tell them, look at this great budget presentation, and then look at ours. And it breaks my heart. But thank you for the job that you do. And it's not your fault that we're where we are, but this is where we are, so.
We are cognizant of the situation, and talking to some folks earlier, I don't see it getting better in the near term. So I'm certainly aware, and as we build a budget, we're cognizant of those things, which is why we don't, our enrollment goes up, yet we don't add staff. I mean, we try to be as frugal as possible while the enrollment goes up. Also, and Mr. Sullivan knows this, we are on a continual basis trying to find projects to assist the town with our own students and staff to try and save some money when you have some projects that are both appropriate and manageable for student population that isn't on a tight timeline. So we recognize that we are part of your team as well, and need to be cognizant of the situation and do what we can to be good partners.
Thank you.
Oh boy, I get to go last. I've done pretty much a complete turnaround since I first got on the finance committee. I think you probably remember I was very adamant. And again, the one thing it's very difficult to look at comparisons to Wareham school systems, because they're funded differently. They're different. So that's one of the things in the presentation that I understand for informational purposes, but it's very difficult to look at from our standpoint. You did mention class sizes. Is it difficult to pin, do you have an average class size? Because I know it's a different type of environment.
Well, for our academic classes, we try to have a class size of 24, but we have a lot that are at 28, and I have a math class that I was in a few days ago that has 31. Our technical programs do have requirements to ratios, student-to-teacher ratios, and square footage requirements, and in most of our programs, that's a 14-to-1 ratio. So we really don't have a lot of latitude in relation to that piece of our staffing.
Okay. It's really difficult for me to look at your benefits and see how much they've gone up and then realize that ours have gone up 34%. And I'm not sure if there's something we can do. Maybe you can tell us how you did it, or not us personally, but I mean, somewhere along the line, when we're going up 34% in benefits and you're going up 3%, we're amazed.
I can only say that the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group has been, has done a nice job of managing benefits. I don't know if you're a part of that or if you're part of a different health organization.
Well, I see them back there writing, just so you know.
Okay. We also, our retirees participate in the GIC, and that's been a pretty cost-effective way to manage post-retirement benefits for our retirees. Beyond that, we are cautious with workers' compensation, unemployment insurance. Those are, we try to do a nice job with who we hire so that we don't have to and get involved in unemployment benefits. So those, and then our property insurance, again, we do a nice job of managing vehicles and buildings so that we don't have a lot of claims, so that we have a decent rating from that perspective.
Wow.
It's about risk management and trying to, but sometimes there are things that are beyond your control, obviously.
We're starting to get into that part now. I've had several visits there, and that's what changed my mind from the very angry young man I guess I was a few years back, because it's a good program, and I see that it's an alternative in a lot of ways to just regular education, and on top of that, it's just well managed. That's the thing I'm looking at. But have you had any feedback from some of the other towns, particularly Bourne? Because I know that they're probably in the boat we were in last year, as far as the large increase. Have they, we haven't heard anything from them, so.
I went to a combined finance committee, selectmen, and then department head meeting just to talk about how they might address some of the shortfall. Their increase is significant, and it's significant because of the enrollment. 55 additional students compared to the previous year. It's also significant because their economic indicators have changed pretty significantly from the previous year. So that also has influenced the minimum contribution. We certainly look at how we can manage that. It's ultimately my goal to keep fluctuations to a minimum, but the admissions process is such that it could happen again. It's unpredictable, and they understand their obligation, and they're going to do, it's my understanding, what they need to find those resources, but they're in a difficult place. And again, I understand that, and it shouldn't be, Upper Cape receives and somebody else doesn't. It would be nice if we could take care of everybody who needs to be taken care of, ultimately. But the formula is what the formula is, unfortunately, and all I can do is inform them in as far in advance as possible, as I have with Derek, which is why he knew he had likely to have a reduction this year.
I'm very happy. First off, I want to thank you for the presentation. As always, it's an excellent presentation. Do you want to introduce?
I do.
Because
Yes.
that's real important to us as well, to know that we can,
I have two school committee members with me from the town of Wareham. Our chair, Robert Fichtenmeyer, and from the town of Bourne, Mary Crook.
Oh, good evening. Also raised in the town of Wareham.
Oh, good.
And I do want to say, and I know they know this, but publicly, I appreciate their support, both on a daily basis, but while I'm here with you as well, because this is a budget that we've developed together, and Mr. Fichtenmeyer understands the challenges you face as well, and is pretty vocal with me, whether in private conversation or as groups, to make sure that we are cognizant of the impact on the town of Wareham.
thank you very much. And that's, we had, I believe it was last year you came to see us, last year. So we have a representative on the board. If we have any further questions, we can approach.
You have two. You have Mr. Fichtenmeyer and you have Mr. Pierce.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very
He's
much for your
walking
time.
again.
He is walking again. That's good to hear.
All right, I think we're good to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'll dismantle that which did not work.
In the meantime, we did the call the meeting to order and roll call. Any citizens here for citizens participation? Want to address the board? Okay, that was easy enough. I just want to mention that as of June 30th, we'll have at least 2 open positions on the Finance Committee. I mention this every week in hopes that we'll finally see some applications flying in, but we have not at this point. If you're interested, and believe me when I tell you it's an excellent committee, if you want to get a good sense of how the municipal government works and municipal finances, is the place to be sitting. So if you're interested, you can get your applications through the town website. You can go to the selectman's office, or if you're interested, you can send an email to fincom, F-I-N-C-O-M .wareham.ma.us. So I just wanted, that's our public service announcement for the week. We'll hold off a minute on the others.
Mr. Dutch, do you have a 3D printer over there? Do you have any of
We do in our engineering program.
Good.
We received that this fall as part of an $87,000 grant.
Scanner and printer?
Printer, not a scanner.
Do you have grant writers on staff?
We do not. We had somebody who's retired, and we've done everything else ourselves this year, and we're looking for somebody who's not been as effective without a professional. It does. Pays for itself.
You ready, Derek? Mr. Town Administrator?
Just say hi to Bob real quick.
All right. Probably wouldn't have been nearly as smiling had it been the increase instead of a decrease, just so you know. Do you want me to do the update on the 2015 budget before you do your update on the 2015 budget?
Yeah, yours will probably be more exciting than mine.
I don't know that mine's going to be that exciting. The group that is trying to bring forth an alternative budget met on Monday, and I think we've talked about the process. I'm pretty sure we've discussed the process, but what it is you're going to see 2 budgets this year. One is going to be without anything in it. It's just going to be the cuts, and then it will show the deficits for the next 5 years. It's a scary thing when you look at it. I think we've seen it here for the most part. And the other budget we're working on is a combination of a revenue adjustment or an override, depending on how you feel about the term. Some good, sound fiscal management that's gone into the operations, as well as some of the other areas like stabilization and capital. So we're going to have a joint meeting on the 27th, which is, I believe, a Thursday. The 27th of this month, it'll be a combination of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the School Committee, and we'll discuss it at that time. So I just wanted to give you that update.
Where and when's that going to be, Larry?
The 27th, it'll be here. I'm assuming it's here. And it will be a joint meeting. That 27th.
What's that?
I don't know the time.
Okay.
Yes, 7 o'clock.
Well, that was a crazy looking 7 you had over there. So, and we can talk a little bit about before it gets there, but this week we're just not in a position to do that. I think when we did our meeting here, we showed 2 different budgets. We showed one with a $3.5 million, but no changes, no fiscal management, no going back and making cuts where we thought we needed to make cuts. It was just to show that if we just threw money at it, it doesn't work. So we're going forward. Do you want to say something, Mrs. Donahue? You were there.
No, I think it's still, it's a little frustrating that it's taking so long to come up with this, but on the other hand, it's really good that it's a lot of back and forth and figuring out what really makes sense. We know that $3.5 million isn't enough. 5 or 6 million is too much, so somewhere in between there is what we're looking at. But we need to understand that it still involves significant cuts and changes, and we just don't get to go happily on our way. So the other component is the Finance Committee will see those numbers before we go into the joint meeting. We'll at least have a chance to have it emailed to us, so we should be comfortable with what's involved in that. But we do have the budget. I don't think there's any changes to the budget that the original cuts that Derek did to balance it for the 2.5 million with those cuts out. I think that will stand because I don't think that's going to get any better. There's no other resolution to that.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening. One of the things I wanted to bring up real quick while we were on the topic of schools and such, when the Superintendent Dutch was making his presentation, one of the items he spoke about was the Chapter 70 increase of $25 per student. And one thing I want people to know is that wasn't a gift or a true increase, let's say. That is the absolute legal minimum that the state has to put forward year in, year out. They have to increase our state aid by $25.
And they won't give us a penny more.
No. So if you were thinking that they increased our state aid, technically not. They did the absolute minimum that they could, and it represented approximately $70,000. So, and there's still, if there's a change in some of the budgets, there's still in the Chapter 70 formula, if there's one section where if our leaders change that, we could potentially have to increase what we spend at Upper Cape Cod Tech just because of the formula involved in it. So let's hope, unless they're going to increase our state aid, nothing else changes. So realistically on the budget, I met with our Harvard Pilgrim representatives and Blue Cross Blue Shield, just trying to see if there's any initiatives we can start, any of the wellness programs and such, because we have high claimants right now. Let's put it bluntly: if we asked them to take us on as a true insurance, they would not pick us up right now. Their words.
We're that much of a risk.
We're that much of a risk right now. So when we originally went self-insured, it saved I believe the first year approximately $500,000 or such. But being self-insured and decreasing our pool through attrition, you ride the crest and go down with it as you go forward. So we are currently in probably one of the worst scenarios we are for high claimants, which would be cancer, major surgery, items such as that. It makes you feel pretty much like a terrible person when you speak about that, because in the reports I look at, it will list the diseases and you realize these people are very sick, and then you break it down to a number. So that's literally where we're at. We are lucky that for this fiscal year, our reinsurance only went up a small percent. I believe it was a company that was trying to get more of our business and sort of took it as a loss leader, only went up several percent. For FY15, we're probably looking at the reinsurance going up approximately 30%, which could represent about $60,000 or so. We don't have the actual rates yet. I should have them next week, and then we'll start looking at them. We are comfortable with the number that we've budgeted, including the dental. So, you know, and going over some of the numbers with them, it doesn't look like we would have an increase beyond what we've budgeted, which is sort of the knock on wood moment. Interestingly enough, they go back and forth with who has the high claimants, and right now, Blue Cross Blue Shield, whose pen I stole, is they have severely high claimants, and it would represent, just for them, would have represented probably a 15% increase. So, the insurance, we brought the workers' comp insurance auditors back because we were dissatisfied with the numbers that they had put forward. We challenged them and came up with some changes and reductions in what they brought forward as salaries. That's what part of it's based on. So we'll see a little bit of savings we should get within the next, I'm hoping, 2 weeks from Maya, our new numbers. And we're having our department heads and employees actively going to certain trainings and such. We just gave the police department approximately 6 CDs for them to look at during enrollment and such, so that they can sign off and we can get credits. The credits can be anywhere from 0.5% to 1% of the premium, so they're well worth it. You do have maximum amount of credits, and we usually max out pretty well. So I think we're approximately $25,000 for this year. So besides that, with the budget, there's been no major increases. Good news, the Serped assessment came in at about I think it was $140 less. Yeah.
The insurance he was talking about, is that something we can pursue further on down the line? I mean, obviously, the self-insured, and a lot of companies did that. At one point, that was the big move, to go to self-insurance. It was going to save you money, and in the long run, it's helped a lot of companies have the same problems we're having in this town.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we can get into the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. Again, we're not exactly an attractive risk pool right now. For like anything, it's when we were at our lowest, we probably should have tried to join one of the other groups because we were attractive to have been brought in. It's like, I guess it's like getting all the mortgage offers while you have a job, and suddenly you lose your job and you can't get it. Yeah, so we're not exactly the most attractive, but it's well worth it. We've brought in South Coast Hospital groups. They're packed into our employee commission there to meet with them. They could not take on our retirees, which was an issue. But we're bringing in all sorts of products, if you will, to see what we can join, what will make the biggest impact and savings to the town.
Any questions?
At the and I'm sorry, at the I guess it was the meeting last Friday had with open forum and onset at the Firehouse Cafe. One of the residents asked the question about the health care, and they were shocked to hear that that the employees had changed their splits. I don't know how they're shocked. It's something I speak about it often. But what they were most shocked about, I think, was that the question was, well, what did we give the employees for them to give that up? And the answer was nothing. So that was what...
Anybody want to take a guess at who asked that question? Well, I know you know who it is.
Oh, I know, that was
All right,
Dick
let's move
Paulson's
on.
issue, but But we also appreciate that from the employees, and it was something that we had talked about for many years coming up to it, that there was a discrepancy between private and public benefits, that in the private world, we were all being asked to have cuts, and our co-pays were going up, and it was very frustrating that municipal employees were still having that protection. So we appreciate what you've done, and we appreciate what the employees have done, and do more.
Yeah, it wouldn't have, without them, clearly it wouldn't have worked, so they needed to buy on, so I appreciated their help.
Any other physical matters? Fiscal matters?
Physical,
Physical? I can't even
I
talk
think I
tonight.
ate too much tonight.
Yeah. I didn't, because I got straight here. My blood sugar's going way down right now.
No, that's all. There's really,
All right.
go ahead.
I want you to hang around for one of the articles, which is the return of Everett Center to town control.
Yep.
Because I know you went over that as well. And I don't know if I think I saw Mr. Barrett come into the room. Are you here to talk about the transfer development rights tonight?
I was unaware that.
Okay, then we'll put it off to another date. I just put you on the spot as much as possible.
And if you'd like to, I don't mind.
Well, we can. We're not in a hurry to get to that one yet. But
Let's let Ed stick around for what he
yeah.
needs to.
All right, let's get this over with. I'll read the article because our clerk's not here. But Article 12 was the return Everett Educational Center to the town control, to see if the town will vote to transfer care, custody, control of Everett Schools, so-called, as further described in the filing on file in the office of the town clerk from the school committee held for school purposes to the Board of Selectmen for general municipal purposes, including sale or other disposition or take any other action relative thereto. Want to talk a little bit about that from your side anyway?
Yeah, well, it's returning the care and custody of the building, so the school does not have the needs for it anymore. Part of it is because there's water infiltration and mold issues within the building, making it essentially unusable as an active facility. If it were a distant relative trying to gift it to me, would I want it? No. But we are essentially the town together, so it's the only problem is then municipal maintenance budget would be for hitting, if we're going to keep the heat on for a minimum just to keep the department running. But then you're getting into sort of a town versus school budget, or is it all one budget? But what this does allow us to do is, if we were to sell the property, it allows us to go down the path of selling it. If we were to use community preservation or community development block grant monies to rehab the property, you could use it for all sorts of purposes. You could use it to create a nonprofit center, to try and bring nonprofits in to help the citizens of Wareham so that they have better access. You could turn it into housing if you wanted. So there is a lot of usages, but essentially to fix or upgrade the property, the general fund obviously would not have the monies for it.
Ballpark on what that would be?
You would have to go and get an estimate. It's not just the roof that leaks; it's a foundation that's actively leaking. So.
Any other questions? Do you want to vote on that right now? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for Article 12, the return of Everett Education Center to town control. Come on.
I'll make a motion for favorable action.
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Go for it. You're discussing.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. It really, again, is a technicality. It's under the care of the schools, but it's owned by the town, so they're just relinquishing their rights and access to it.
Yeah,
And it comes back to us. So we really don't have a whole lot of choice. The next step will be what we do with it after we take it back.
At some point, it would be it looks like we're going to have several buildings returned to us, and we need to come up with a plan for these properties. And if getting rid of, for lack of a better term, through a process or selling it is the best option, we should go through that. But sometimes, even though they're in dilapidated condition, it does have some sort of value, it can help bring back the town. It's a real neat location, I think, right there. There's not that much around it, but you've got, you're right off of the highway when you think about it for a center to bring something in, so.
Question, could this it needs to be rehab
Yes.
or demolished?
I don't think you could demolish it, it's a
Can't
historic
demolish it?
building.
Could it possibly be used for like council on aging?
I mean, you could use it for anything, but is it
Would
the
that need to be,
is it the best use? Would it fit for the purpose? I mean, I would say you take a walk through there before you try and do something like the Council on Aging.
okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
No, good, Joe.
It would seem to me that you're getting a transfer to the town. At the same time, it'd be nice to be able to put enough on there so that the selectmen could make a decision as to what the heck to do with it. You're gonna get it, you're gonna maintain it, and then somebody's gonna come up with a suggestion what we do with it, then it's gotta go to a town meeting. So, I mean, we're talking a year from now before we take any action on this thing. We gotta be able to leapfrog some of these
Well,
things,
this
or
is the
double
first
jumping.
step. This is before they can do anything else, they've got to take it back, so.
But within that, so you could take it back and.
Tom, we start leapfrogging things, and I wear an orange jumpsuit in prison. So,
Well, that's why I said, no.
So no, we follow the path,
Go
okay.
ahead. Mr. Camerano.
Quick question, I'll be the advocate here. What if we don't accept it back? What happens?
not
It's
much.
really, basically, there is no choice here.
That's
Basically, that's all I get out of it, there's no choice.
If you don't accept it back, there's no other purposes except educational purposes that it can be used for. Then.
Okay, I understand, okay. So it's basically a use by, thank you, all right, I understand.
This is making, do you have something, Mrs. Donahue, do you want to add anything?
Nope,
All right, this is like giving my son my car for a year. He doesn't wash it, he tears up the tires, doesn't change the oil for 50,000 miles and said, here you go, Dad. It's not the best of circumstances, but
I think between the two of us, we're giving them some golden quotes right now.
oh, sorry.
Let's vote, come on.
Oh, no, we're gonna, if we accept it, we do have, and maybe I'm just being Pollyanna tonight, is that the word we're looking for?
Wow,
I know, that's a big one, huh?
big one, pal.
So maybe we do turn it into something that is a profit center for the town of Wareham, and as opposed to sitting there collecting dust and getting worse, so.
And I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but profit doesn't necessarily mean that we earn money through through rentals and such.
No.
Profit means that it brings something to the community
Right.
as a whole.
Exactly.
So.
Right, and with the more open approach with CPC money that we've seen, there's a certain amount of rehab we could put into that building and maybe turn it into something. Don't be looking at me back there.
Yeah, it was an article several years ago, it was defeated on town meeting floor. Sorry.
And that's fine, but let me try this. A couple years ago, we had several articles defeated on town meeting floor that absolutely blow my mind today. And we're doing everything we can to stop that kind of mentality, because we need to be all looking at the facts and the figures and making decisions that make sense. So, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you, but at the same time, we got new leadership and we're trying really hard to do things right in this town. All right, I'll take there's a motion and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Did we lose somebody?
Jeff stepped out.
Okay, that's 5-0-0. All right, I think we're done with you for the most part. please have a lovely night.
You
Thank you
too.
very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate, if people knew how hard you worked, really
Oh.
knew how hard you worked.
Thank
They would be very, very shocked. So,
I don't know how to take that.
well, I can tell you
That's a
this.
compliment, Tom. Good take it as a compliment.
I can tell you this. I talk to him sometimes at 5, sometimes at 6, sometimes in the morning. I get a mysterious call at 6:30 or 7. So he's always working.
Don't
and
ever figure
know
your
that.
hourly wage. It's not a good thing.
Sometimes he interrupts my meditation sessions. I don't know, but Mr. Sullivan puts in a lot of time and effort into this town.
Can I interject before he totally leaves?
Sure.
I apologize for taking it out of order. We had some discussion with the, I can't find it, the cemetery, the use of the cemetery money, and I understand that that was there were some concerns about that article, that it was potentially flawed because of the amount and it being capital.
Yeah, it would have to come before the what is it, the building repair, this was before was the cemetery roof, and it's going beyond the $50,000 to the 90. So there's two options. Either the capital planning committee will need to approve that, be brought before them, but I would say you also need the approval of town meeting, so it's not just authorizing it. So technically, could you bring to the special town meeting the authorization to do that? That's probably what would have to
Okay.
be done. But capital planning, it would need to be brought before them as well.
I just don't want to be in the position of throwing it out because it's flawed and wrong, even though the concept is right. We've had that problem in the past too, so I want to make sure we can work on fixing it so that it gets done properly.
Yeah, we sort of had a similar thing with the ambulance last year. If you remember, we had the funding mechanism in one town meeting and the approval to purchase it in the other town meeting. So.
Okay.
That would require us to throw out that entire article because that's the article, the way it's written versus what's actually in the article. It was the motion or the explanation was not written correctly or what was going on in that article.
So the actual article itself, and I'd have to reread it on there, so it might be that it's flawed. in and
Right,
of
and then
itself.
we'll have that discussion when we have our other meeting, I
Okay.
guess. Okay.
All right, now run quick before we think of anything else to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hustle, thank you. All right, Article 8 on the Upper Cape budget. I'll entertain a motion and a second.
Motion for favorable action on the budget for Upper Cape Cod Regional Vocational Technical School.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 500. Hey, that's pretty good. I put it in the right area this time, too. We're not going to have the water pollution control tonight. They're still in the midst of an audit and some other findings, so we'll have that next week. We'll try to wrap up as many as we can next week because, and I'll just move right down in there. Let's see, the 26th will be our public hearing, the 26th. Here. We probably need, the reason we're doing it on the 26th is, I believe, at that point, we're not ready to go to print, so, and we haven't really finalized anything, so if anybody wants to come before us, and we may hear something that perhaps changes our mind, so that's why we're doing it on the 26th. We should also, at the same time, have the articles for the special town meeting. I think we can do them at the same time? Okay, we'll do those at the same time. So we'll have our public hearing for the articles, or for the warrant, on the 26th. And then we'll follow it up the 27th with the whole budget issue. We're going to have, I think, we haven't set the date yet, but I believe that we're going to, a couple of us, and I believe I don't know who goes to this thing. I believe it's the town moderator, the town council. So a few people, we're going to have the motions prepared. And so after the motions are prepared, we'll, smile. we'll start working on the motions. Start reading through the motions, make sure they're correct. I want to have, I don't know if we're having you're not having a pre-town meeting?
I'm open to it.
Okay. We want to try to set something up like we did last year. Where I don't know that you want to call that a pre-town meeting, but for us it was. Gives us a chance to read through the motions. It gives us a chance to talk about how we're going to do town meeting. So I don't know what date we're going to do that on yet. What do you think? You got any ideas? I won't be here the first week of April, so.
Me either.
Where are we going? Yeah, I'll be gone too. I'll be out of town. We really don't, we'll have to do it closer to town meeting, so. Let's revisit that next week. It's too early, but we need to have that. We're going to have 2 people reading the motions, because I believe if it goes over one day, we have to have a backup plan. As far as reading the advice, I think we're going to, Mr. Hurd has volunteered, and Mrs. Donahue didn't volunteer, but I just heard her volunteer, so we have that covered as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a couple things. The warrant book this year, or the book we're putting together, is a little different than years past, and it's going to take a little bit of work. We need to, what date do we're going through the dates. We're just moving through this whole thing. What date do we need to have things submitted to you? You know, we got to be way up in here. So the last day that we're going to vote articles and have our advice in, we'll just say the 9th. Last day she can accept it is the 11th. So probably the Wednesday before, on the 2nd, we'll start writing advice as a group. I think it's easier. I'll bring a laptop. We'll write it on there and we'll get it to Kelly. The book's going to be different this year. It'll be the same up front. It'll still have the letter from the finance committee. It'll have the articles with our advice and in there in our votes as well. But then we'll have addendums. I'm not going to use the word appendices anymore until I research that a little bit. The first one will most likely be the rules of town meeting, which we have a copy of, which instead of our town moderator having to spend 45 minutes explaining the rules, they'll be in the book. The second addendum would be the glossary of terms. And the third one is going to be the water pollution control facility budget, detail budget, revenue and expenses. In the past, we've never had that in there. And it's critical that when people are voting on something in the budget, they need to be able to see what makes it up. I think the motion's a little different this year. We'll clear that up later. And the last one will be the school committee's budget. Because once again, you're seeing 2 line items in the budget. This gives people a chance to look at the detailed budget for the school committee. So we'll have a fairly robust book. I think the issue, what was it we were going to talk about now, Kelly? The printing? I'll let Kelly tell you about here.
Well, we still just need to make a decision what we're doing with the budget, the warrant. I think we said the special could be done in-house. Right. And I did send you quotes for. Yeah, I'll pull it up right now. I think I have that. For the annual, some rough estimates. If we did it out.
Staples, I got it all right there.
There's Staples, and then Gateway Printing, which we've used before, gave me several estimates.
I think that's the one we're probably looking at.
Right.
300.
It depends it basically depends how many warrants we want. I think 300 was thrown out.
Go ahead.
But I don't know.
As far as printing, one other thought you might want to give to is The summer celebration has been having Barnstable County Sheriff's Office do quite a bit of printing. They're significantly lower than some of your commercial areas. You might want to just give them a call and see if they'd be in any position to do something for you. It's about half the price.
I think we're stuck on a number too, and this is what, are we printing 300 or are we printing 500? I don't know what kind of attendance we're looking for at town meeting, but up, high? Okay, so we'll make that decision, but I think we're probably going to be on the safe side. I don't really think 500 is an awful lot of warrants. We even at our highest, since I've been here, is 350. Well, that wasn't that. That was 250.
I mean, the rules in the glossary are probably carryovers. You could be long on those.
No, it's not. It's not the number of pages, because they're giving us 50 pages, and I don't think we're even going to be close. We'll be in the range of 50 pages, but it's just the number of copies.
I understand that. So you'd produce a lot of rules and glossaries, so you overshot those anyway, and then the warrant itself could be the number you really want to zero in on, because you can't use that after you.
It is gonna be
the
what
event.
it is, whatever,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I think 500 is too high. My personal. Do you? Okay. We'll
I think
you'll give Barnstable a call. Pardon me?
I was thinking 500 would be too high. This is for
Town
to
meeting.
be distributed at the town meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And we normally get,
Yeah,
We ask
but this
people
is,
to share.
and I understand the comment that this is a little more, this might be a little bit hot button issue, what we're doing this year.
true.
But like I said, when it's hot button, then we're looking at 350 as opposed to 175. So I'm not saying, I don't want to print 300 and have 350, but I don't want to print 500 and have 350. So, pardon me?
400 is a
400.
compromise.
Well, can we change it to 400?
Just check the price
All
and
right.
see what the cutoff is on price, Larry.
All right, so Kelly's going to call Barnstable, and I wonder why they're printing so cheap.
Barnstable
Constable what?
County.
Barnstable Sheriff's Department.
Sheriff's Department, Blair?
You have to pick them up yourself, though.
Claire, that was the Barnstable Sheriff's Department?
I can give the information, Kelly. I have.
Okay.
So we'll decide on that. Just remember, the last day to submit special town meeting articles is the 14th. Oops. Yep.
I agree with your comment, though, too. Make two separate ones.
All right. March 18th is the Board of Selectmen will close the special town meeting warrant, and March 19th we'll actually receive it. I don't know that there's going to be anything earth-shattering on there, but we'll see how much we can get through very quickly on that one. We don't have a lot of articles left because most of them require financial information in them before we vote on them. We should have most of the financial information at our next meeting. But I've also, like I said, Guy Campina is coming, the superintendent of is he superintendent? That's correct, of the Water Pollution Control Facility to discuss their budget. And then I guess we'll probably have Mr. Barrett, who's sitting back there waving at us, in to talk about the transfer development rights.
You could do that right now.
Well, you want to do that right now? Anybody? Come on up.
Probably a good idea, because I'm tied up the next couple Wednesdays.
You guys
Sorry,
quit.
I don't have any materials.
If you guys quit having public hearings late. Yes, Mr. Slavin.
You're going to have to print the ADR also, which I believe is 8 to 10 pages. Okay. So you do front to back. We did it as an insert last fall.
Is that going to be part of the article, or are we going to have to put another addendum in there?
That's going to be an addendum as a handout or something. We have to have it available.
Well, if it's too expensive, you guys can make it a handout, but we'll try to get it in the booklet.
We did it as a handout last time.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do.
All right. Yes.
I think we've been through this before, but to start over, transfer development rights is a planning tool, a process where a landowner or a group of landowners can take their inherent rights of development and transfer it to another piece of property. The bylaw that you see, I don't know if you have a copy with you, if it's in there, but the bylaw that's proposed defines what the sending parcels are, what the receiving parcels are, and the process by which the number of development rights are determined, and pretty much the whole special permit process that you'd have to go through to remove those rights from one piece of property and transfer them to another piece. That it can be used as a conservation tool, a planning tool, a way to, one of the end results could be rebuilding villages in town, rebuilding downtown areas. What it saves the town would be a lot of infrastructure that would have to be maintained later. It eliminates paved surfaces, roadways that you would normally use to service these sprawling developments. It would put development where the infrastructure already exists. It would allow, in the case if it were cranberry bog owners, it would allow them to maintain their buffer of upland around their properties and obviously not be developed. It would protect watershed areas. It can be a very useful tool for both landowners and the town. I think it can be mutually beneficial if we execute it properly.
You want to do this like we did last time? Start with Mr. Tufts? Nope. Mr. Worthen?
Nope, no question.
No question?
I have one.
Okay.
Obviously, everything has downfalls. What would be a downfall to this? What would, I understand the benefits, but do you foresee it being used in the wrong way? Is there any possibility of, what's the word I'm looking for? Misuse?
The only thing that I can perceive as being an issue would be is if you were an area where that increased density was taking place, you might have a not in my backyard issue. What we've tried to do is put that density where it's wanted, places we want to develop, and not dump it into, we don't see it going into existing residential areas, you know. The whole process is, under the special permit process, will come under a great deal of scrutiny at the planning board. And there's a lot of work that will have to go in by an applicant and the planning board to make sure that we don't have negative impacts. You know, nobody wants that. We all want good projects.
So, secondary that, so you feel that the planning board will still have enough control over it to prevent any misuses, the way it's written?
Yeah, I can't really imagine, you know, this is, I don't know how many times we've gone through drafts of this, and every time we do it, we look for where things can go badly or where we want to improve on things. So I think we've got a pretty, I won't say bulletproof, but a good working document to start with.
It's good enough for me, thank you.
And that's, I'd just piggyback on that and ask for the mechanism. So it is a special permit that an applicant would be applying for.
Right.
So it would have to go through planning first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It would not be exempt from conservation issues, Board of Health issues, or anything. But the actual process where you determine the number of units to be transferred and where they're going to go and how it's going to be executed would be
Is it a
through the planning board.
one-for-one transfer?
Right now, it is.
Okay.
I know in the past, there's been density bonuses proposed for the types of land being conserved and other density bonuses for the type of housing that's going to be created in the end. Those types of things can change over time, so we thought we would keep this as simple as possible. And then down the line, if the town decides it wants to emphasize a certain type of construction or conserve a certain area or town, say, then, you know, we could come back to town meeting and maybe award some of these density bonuses. But right now, we thought we'd keep it on a 1-to-1.
Okay.
Development's a really big word. Development could mean a lot of different things. Can you give us an idea what type of development would be more in line with someone using TDR rights to put something in?
Well, you could take the example I gave earlier. If you had one or more bog owners that wanted to preserve the land around their operation, but under financial necessity found the need to have to subdivide and sell it off, which we've seen time and time again. This would give them the opportunity to have something they could market without using up their upland buffer. They could take that development right and turn it into multifamily housing, mixed use, create, you know, Wareham is known for all the little villages that are sprinkled up throughout the town, some of which don't really exist anymore. Maybe you could transfer those rights into bringing back one of those village settings, or bringing a new one out of the ground even. You know, it's surprising since this has come up. I've run into people that have a little bit of property and they, you know, they don't want to see it developed, but they know with the next generation that's probably going to happen, and they may just want to preserve the property the way it is.
So they would sell their right to develop their property and
Right.
put a permanent deed restriction on it,
Correct.
and they sell those rights to another party.
Right. Now, we have no input as to what the market value is to that. We're not involved in any determination there. That would be between the two parties.
Overdevelopment. I know you're talking about controls,
Mm-hmm.
but is there a chance of overdevelopment?
If you look through it, there is a cap on density.
That's
So,
what I'm looking for.
You know, I think we settled on 12 units per acre, which is very similar to what your Onset Village and your Wareham Village densities are. Density done properly is not a bad thing. You know, it's when you get the slipshod approach with no oversight, I think. Well, even some of our historic areas of town that have a density far exceeding that. You know?
Any other questions? Thank you for your time, Mr. Perry.
Thank you.
All right, let's get this vote out of the way too.
You want to, before Mr. Barrett goes, you want to go ask him about 20? If that's,
No, not right now.
street layouts, no, that's his.
We're waiting on something on Lynn Road, I believe, are we
That's the
not?
Board of Selectmen.
No.
They're still waiting for Lynn Road to complete engineering work for approval by the planning board coming back from the Board of Selectmen. It's still in the queue, but unfortunately, as of today, still can't go forward.
And as much as I'd like to ask him about 24, that's a petitioned article, and I think we need to have the proponent of the article appear.
I just want to make sure before he left. That's
All right,
No
so
problem.
Article 22 is transfer development rights to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws to add Article 18, transfer development rights, zoning bylaw rules and regulations, or to take any other action relative thereto. I'll entertain a motion and a second.
Motion for favorable action on Article 22.
No second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? 5-0-0.
No, 6 is not.
6? Oh, that's right, you're back. I'm not good at counting. Yeah,
That's why you're
go
on the
figure.
Finance Committee.
I can only deal with big numbers in the millions. I don't deal with little numbers. All right, so where was that at? 22?
Yep.
6-0-0. All right. I know everybody's going to be tired by the time we get to town meeting, and I apologize in advance, but we just have a lot to do, and we don't have a lot of time to get there, so we really need to get as many people into the meetings as we can. All right. Is there anything else I need to, oh, yes, minutes. Is that next, or do you want to talk about something else? Kelly is the brains behind the operation, just so you know. All right. Well, hold on a minute. Somewhere in here is my agenda. There it is.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could, just 1 minute.
Oh,
Participate real quickly.
okay. Go ahead.
Sorry. Last night's Board of Selectmen meeting, there was some consternation about our process of voting. You know, positive action, or, you know, the way we do it. And one of the members in particular thought that was crazy, stupid, et cetera. I would ask that maybe you, as the chair, get a hold of the chair of the Board of Selectmen and come up with something that, so we both end up voting the same way, so we don't really confuse people. Because it's a possibility they would vote, favorable action, and if it's not a favorable action, they'd go back and have another motion for unfavorable action, which would really mess everybody up.
I know the reason that it was changed, because I was at town meetings where people were saying, well, wait a minute, is it favorable or not favorable? So I understand why. We actually, this year, I was contemplating changing our vote to the finance committee advises the town and the action. But I thought that was a little more confusing, and why break it right now? I'll talk to him.
Talk to him, because there's a chance we may end up having an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that we've adopted this favorable motion, favorable action, and then voting one way or the other, and I think it's been done because it's less confusing to the people. If they see favorable action, they see 0-6, they realize it's not favorable. But you can't please everybody. So we can have a discussion on that later, but for this year, I think, or at least for this town meeting, we should keep it the same. Anyone weigh in on that one at all, Ms. Moderator? Madam Moderator?
I actually got out town meeting time today to try to find the whole explanation for that, and I ran out of time to go through it, but I will try to find what the explanation is and why most towns do it that way.
Do it favorable action.
Favorable action. And the premise behind it is that generally when you put something on town meeting, you're not putting anything on town meeting that's not favorable to the town. It's your recommendation. Yeah, I said generally. I tempered it by generally. The intent of the Board of Selectmen is to only put things on a warrant that should be on a warrant, that are beneficial to the town, favorable to the town, except for petition articles, which you have no control over. So generally, they're placing things on the warrant that are favorable to the town, but it's your recommendation as to whether financially the impact is favorable or non-favorable.
That's why I was going to change ours to the Finance Committee advises, as opposed to we vote favorable action, because it really is on advice from us.
Right.
But
And it's your advice based on whether it's financially sound for the town to take that favorable action.
just a lot of changes in this town meeting anyway, and one more, and I don't want to send everybody screaming to the hills.
I know, we've been trying to do it gradually because, you get accustomed to something being done a certain way, it's very hard to change, but I think we're getting there. I think we've made a lot of improvements over the last 3 years, and before my time is up, I think we'll be in a much better position.
That's all we hope for.
Yeah, I would like to do a town meeting 101 at some point in time, just let people come in and talk about what things mean and how, because it's very difficult for somebody who comes from a city form of government to understand the town meeting process. And I know it took me probably 15 years before I got it.
Well, I just saw it as an opportunity because I moved to a town and we didn't have this form of government in Tennessee. We had a similar one in one place, but we didn't. Go ahead. Don't even think about it over there. We didn't have this form of government down there, and I think this is probably the most pure form of democracy there is, where you can stand up on town meeting floor and influence one way or another a vote. And you're not going to get that in a lot of places. You have to influence a person who's voting for you, which is a totally different concept. So,
Yeah, I think maybe at some point in time, not around town meeting time, maybe something to do
after June 30th.
after June.
I'm just saying. All right?
You know, at some point in time when things aren't quite so hectic, and just, you know, bring people in and do a mock town meeting, and maybe invite some of my fellow moderators to come in and sort of lead the parade and ask, how do you stand up and speak to a question? I have to tell you, when I went to Wayland, I sat there and went, yes, we'll get there. It's, you know, if you can really get people to understand how to address the question that's before you, it will speed up town meeting 10 times faster.
I think we did a much better job this last town meeting, so hopefully we can continue the trend. So, all right, thank you. All right, I'll take a motion on approval of the meeting minutes from February 26th.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
This is not a approval, not approval. I need to get a review. When Nan Miller was describing the various pools of money she had as a cemetery commissioner, there was $330,000 that you couldn't touch. I mean, which I didn't quite understand. The state doesn't let you do anything with it.
Okay, so
Did I understand that correctly?
yeah, there are Mass General laws that govern this, and I can get a copy of them because I went through this last year before we went to town meeting. And it's,
I was gonna say,
I have one of those at home. Be honest with you, by the time you get finished reading the Mass General law, you'll be more confused than you were when you went in. But it has to do with you can use a percentage of the money, or in some cases, the interest.
They were digging into principal,
Right,
and so now they've got to put a hold on it until it rebuilds.
right. They were they thought they had more money than they, I don't know.
Why can't you spend the whole damn thing?
That's right.
It was depleted.
Huh?
They thought they had more money than they did.
Yeah, the accountant ruled on that, so.
Do you want us to put something on next week about the Mass General laws? We talk about them? Well, no, I think you need to understand them. I think you're right. We're voting on it. It's money, so let's understand it.
Well, there's a state in here, the cemetery commissioners are looking for the sale of lots and graves account to fund the proposed project. And then down below there, on the same thing, she's explained the perpetual care trust fund is money from anyone who has purchased a cemetery plot. There's one from the sale of plots, lots and graves, and the other is from the purchase of a cemetery plot. What's the difference?
No, I think it was perpetual care of the plots.
Yeah.
If I'm right, yeah.
When they pay 2 fees.
That's right.
You know, there's so many puns here. I mean, they're the last people to let you down. There's all these things. But they have 2 fees, one for the sale of the plot, and then on the burial expenses, they have the perpetual care. So, and they're supposed to be split and to go in two different accounts.
And the money flows when they make a commitment for the lot, and then another part of the money flows when the lot is used?
Yeah, but a lot of times it happens at the same time.
Okay.
It's not a.
Let's put this on. I really think we'll have a discussion. It's really only, I believe there's a section in there, and I'll bring it in.
I did print them out, I apologize,
Yeah,
I don't have them with me
I went over
tonight,
this
but
last year.
I did
when
this
they
last
had
week.
Several articles, and it's a very confusing thing, but in the end, you get the idea.
It made it sound that night that there was money in perpetuity that could never be touched, which is a great thing for a conservative, but just the mechanics weren't right at the time. They need to wait. So.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. So we still got a motion and a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstained? Everybody here last week?
Week before.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
5600. Okay, our next meeting, I know this is hard to believe, but it's next Wednesday. Pardon? I'm so sorry. Our next meeting is the 19th. Yes, sir.
I just, I wanted to make note, just on a personal note, because I feel it looks so rude when I walk in here at whatever time, but I've been assigned to be in New Hampshire for the next 24 Wednesdays. So unfortunately, I get out at 4 and I
And you
get a...
still come see us afterwards? We're so,
that's
thank you, Jeff.
dedication.
I don't want it to look like I'm being rude and just casually walk in. I just, unfortunately, I can't, I don't...
That's
have a
okay.
choice.
Tom tattled on you before you
Oh, he
got
did,
here.
okay, all right.
We really do appreciate that. That's quite the effort.
Do you want to do it now? Let's do it next week. We're tired and old. Not all of us are old, but I am. All right, so next meeting is the 19th. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, hopefully we'll have the other two back with us. We really got to crack down on some things. I also put in front of you the bulletin from Department of Revenue on the 2015 budget issues and other related matters. If you get a chance to read through it, some of it's informative and some of it's amusing, just for the record.
I meant to mention when Derek was here, there is a section in there that says he's supposed to ask our permission to deficit spend snow and ice, so I
Yeah.
suppose next week we should put that in the agenda to actually tell him it's okay.
Yeah, we have to tell him whether he can spend the money or not. All right, so I'll entertain a motion for, is there any liaison reports? Not that we're really liaisoned out or anything.
No, but I do have a question.
What would that be?
Reading this letter from, regarding the library,
Yes.
is the library the only people that can actually deal with this preservation of our history here? Or can that be dealt with, even though it's in the library building, can it be dealt with by another group that isn't going to close? Did you read this, Larry?
I've read it. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Marilyn will.
Now, you might know the ultimate answer. I was just going to explain that what most of us don't realize unless you go exploring the library, the way that building's set up, you only see a very small section of it in the front that's where the public uses, and then there's some public meeting rooms. But there's actually a room in the back that is more climate controlled, and it's locked, and that is, you can only go in there with the proper designee. Now, I don't know whether the library, there's somebody that the library staff could delegate to do that, or could designate to do that, but no, that is off limits to the general public, because the stuff that's in there is of historic import, and you just don't want anyone...
delicate.
And delicate, and, yeah.
I grabbed all that, but what I'm saying is by closing the library, is there another group in town that, obviously the building's gonna still be there, that can deal with this? From the way I'm reading this is, I would hate to see it leave the town of Wareham. That's what I'm up against. Al can answer that, maybe?
I was
Or
going to
somebody else can?
Please.
Town administrator's responsibility, why don't you leave it there?
Just leave it alone at
it's-
that?
You know, I believe the state will come and take the records, not return them.
I think I leave it with the town administrator.
Yeah, it's.
To answer and deal with it.
I will just
Okay.
say it's been discussed. It's being discussed
Yeah,
at this
it's-
point.
No, I
We
just
can't-
became aware of it by reading this. I didn't realize it, and it just caught my mind, that's all.
But this is one of those things that it's good that somebody brings it to our attention, because we're talking about some major changes within the library, and we need to know what all the implications are. So the fact that our historic records are being preserved there is an important function that I forgot about, quite honestly. I mean, I'm thinking in terms of the resources that already exist there, the books, the materials, the meeting room that we use so frequently. So those are still issues that are being discussed. I don't think anything's been finalized, and I think when...
As long as the town administrator has the responsibility of it,
It's his
that's fine
responsibility,
with
now
me.
he's aware of it, so.
It's fine with me, thank you.
Before we go, we lost a young man this week, Tariq Johnson. I know my daughter was very heartbroken by that, so we want to have a moment of silence for him. He was a special kid. So everybody bow your heads. I'm not sure I have the times right, but I believe it's Sunday from 2 to 7. I will get the announcement. The wake is Sunday. It's in Mattapoisett. I'll get the dates. It'll be out. And I think the funeral's on Monday, so. Now I'll take a motion to dismiss this.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you.